Good evening, and thank you for joining this strategic analysis. What we are about to examine is not a routine military exercise, and it is not a symbolic demonstration of capability. What unfolded in the waters of the Persian Gulf was something far more consequential. It was a controlled revelation, a deliberate exposure of a new doctrine, a signal, not just to regional adversaries, but to the entire global military order. The reality is this: warfare is no longer defined by singular platforms, by individual missiles, or by isolated systems of power. It is now defined by scale, by coordination, and by overwhelming complexity. And in this moment, that transformation was placed on full display because what Iran executed was not just a drone launch, it was a system. And what the United States responded with was not just detection. It was a test of whether modern defense architectures can survive the next evolution of warfare. Not theoretically, not conceptually, but in operational reality. The event began without chaos, without visible escalation. There was no immediate sense of crisis. The waters remained calm. Surveillance systems were active but routine. Naval assets maintained standard positioning. The expectation was observation. The assessment was wrong. At a precisely calculated moment, Iran initiated the deployment, not of one drone, not of a handful, but 100 coordinated unmanned aerial systems launched in rapid succession. This was not saturation for the sake of spectacle. This was structured pressure. Each drone was part of a layered formation, designed to simulate real-world strike conditions, variations in altitude, variations in speed, variations in trajectory. Some units operated at low altitude to evade radar horizons. Others climbed deliberately, forcing early detection and response prioritization. The mathematics were simple: overwhelm the sensor grid, force decision-making under compression, create uncertainty faster than it can be resolved. This was not about impact, it was about exposure. The swarm advanced not as individual assets, but as a single distributed system. Communication protocols between units ensured adaptive spacing. If one drone deviated, others compensated. If one signal degraded, redundancy maintained cohesion. This was not improvisation, this was doctrine. And as the swarm expanded across the operational space, it became clear that this was not merely a demonstration of capability. It was a message encoded in motion. Iran was not showing what it has, it was showing how it intends to fight. On the opposing side, the United States did not respond with visible aggression. There were no immediate intercepts, no rapid missile launches, no kinetic engagement. Instead, the response began silently. Detection, tracking, classification. The U.S. defense architecture in the region activated its layered sensor network. Space-based surveillance systems provided initial detection vectors. Naval radar arrays refined tracking data. Airborne early warning platforms extended coverage beyond conventional limits. This was not a single system reacting. This was an ecosystem. Each drone in the swarm was identified, cataloged, and monitored in real time. Flight paths were analyzed, behavioral patterns were recorded, signal emissions were dissected. The objective was not to destroy. The objective was to understand. Because in modern warfare, destruction is easy. Understanding is decisive. As the swarm evolved in formation, U.S. systems adapted in parallel. Algorithms processed trajectory predictions. Artificial intelligence modules assessed potential strike configurations. Electronic warfare units evaluated signal vulnerabilities. And yet, despite this technological superiority, a critical reality emerged. The system was under strain, not failure, but pressure. Because tracking 100 independent yet coordinated aerial objects is not a linear challenge, it is exponential. Each additional unit increases complexity, not just in detection, but in prioritization. Which targets matter? Which trajectories are real threats? Which signals are decoys? The system did not fail, but it was tested. And in that test, a new vulnerability was illuminated, not in hardware, not in capability, but in decision speed. What Iran demonstrated was not technological superiority in isolation. It was strategic alignment between cost, scale, and effect. Each drone in the swarm was relatively inexpensive. Individually, they posed limited threat, but collectively, they transformed into a system capable of saturating even advanced defense networks. This is the core of asymmetric warfare evolution, not matching power, but redefining it. The expectation in traditional doctrine is clear: advanced militaries dominate through precision, speed, and technological superiority. But swarm warfare challenges that assumption. Because precision becomes irrelevant when the volume exceeds processing capacity. Speed becomes insufficient when targets multiply faster than responses. And technology becomes constrained when decision cycles cannot keep pace. The mathematics were never about one drone reaching a target. The mathematics were about forcing a system into overload. And in this exercise, that principle was executed with clarity, not metaphorically, not theoretically, but operationally. Because this was not an isolated demonstration, it was a preview. If a swarm of 100 drones can test advanced U.S. tracking systems in a controlled environment, the question becomes unavoidable. What happens at scale? What happens when the number is not 100, but 1,000? What happens when these swarms are integrated with missile systems, cyber operations, and electronic warfare attacks? The battlefield does not expand, it fragments, and in that fragmentation, control becomes increasingly difficult. For global military powers, this introduces a fundamental challenge. Defense systems are designed for identifiable threats: missiles, aircraft, ships. But swarm warfare introduces ambiguity. Every object is a potential threat. Every signal is a potential deception. Every decision carries increased risk. The system must choose. And in choosing, it becomes vulnerable. Beyond technology and tactics, there is another layer, one that is often overlooked but deeply consequential: psychology. Because warfare is not only about destruction, it is about perception. By executing this exercise in full visibility, Iran achieved more than technical validation. It introduced uncertainty into the strategic calculations of its adversaries. Uncertainty about response time, uncertainty about system limits, uncertainty about future engagements. And in military strategy, uncertainty is power. The message was clear, not explicitly stated, but unmistakably delivered. We can be overwhelmed, because the perception alone alters the strategic environment. What remains now is not a conclusion, but a question, multiple questions, because this event does not resolve the future of warfare. It destabilizes it. Can existing defense systems evolve fast enough to counter swarm-based threats? Can decision-making architectures adapt to exponential complexity? Can technological superiority maintain its dominance in the face of scalable, low-cost systems? Or is the balance already shifting? The reality is that no system is infinite, no architecture is unbreakable, and no doctrine remains dominant forever. What we witnessed was not the end of a capability, it was the beginning of a new contest. A contest not defined by who has the most powerful weapons, but who can manage complexity at scale, who can decide faster, who can adapt sooner, and who can endure longer. Because in the next conflict, the question will not be whether systems can detect threats. The question will be whether they can survive them, and that is where this story truly begins. So the final assessment is not definitive. It cannot be. Because the system did not fail, but it was not comfortable. And in that discomfort lies the most important insight of all. The future of warfare has already arrived. The only question is, who is truly prepared for it?